Much of our everyday language is derived from combat. Phrases like the war on X or, hey, that hotshot detective is a real loose cannon. But damn it, he gets the job done. The first half of that one, anyway. Everyday conversation is filled with idioms and phrases that we use without really knowing what they mean or where they came from. For instance, a good rule of thumb. Whose thumb? Yours? Mine? Some third person's? But still, you might be surprised to learn that many common words and phrases, even things you say nearly every day, came from the battlefield. So, today we're discharging some everyday phrases that came from the military. But before we review this linguistic legacy, why don't you review that subscribe button? Then let us know in the comments what other unexpected etymology you would like to hear about next. For now, 10 hut! If you start a new job, it's expected that someone with more experience in the position will explain how things are done. Some would say that an experienced coworker was showing you the ropes, which, unless you worked at a rope factory, is an odd thing to say, right? Well, the term to know the ropes, meaning to learn how to do something properly, comes from a 19th century naval expression. As could be expected, the ropes in question relate to the variety of knots that sailors should be familiar with to secure the rigging of a ship. To show somebody the ropes was to ensure their ignorance was not going to damage your boat. It's basically saying, make sure this yahoo knows his knots. Know the Ropes was first recorded in an 1840 book by Richard Henry Dana Jr. called 2 Years Before the Mast, and can be used whenever someone is shown a new skill. And now you know the ropes on knowing the ropes. When someone succeeds with flying colors, it doesn't mean it was achieved by throwing Crayola crayons across the room. It just means something was done with distinction. Like if one were to take a test and get 100%, we would say they passed with flying colors and probably toss a couple high fives their way. This old naval expression comes from the triumph of a victorious ship returning to port from battle. These ships would be flying the flags of their homeland, each with its own unique colors. So to return with flying colors was to stroll back into town as a hero. See where we're going here? Think of the wildest party you've ever been to. If that bad boy was fully decked out with everything you needed to cut loose, you'd say that party went balls to the wall. Despite what we probably all assumed, this term actually refers to military aviation and the little ball-shaped throttle lever in the cockpit. Pilots would have to push that little orb all the way forward to harness the maximum power of the engine. Essentially, the ball would have to be pushed up to the wall of the control panel to achieve maximum power, for when you feel the need for speed. Referring to a remote, isolated, or downright rough part of town, boondocks saw its rise in the nomenclature around the early 20th century. Adapted from the Tagalog word bundok, or mountain, U.S. soldiers serving in the Philippines heard it and thought it catchy enough to bring it home to the States. As you've probably gathered from the umpteenth time you've heard this word, umpteen simply means indefinitely many. It was originally a military term, umpty, which was used in the early part of the 20th century to describe a large number that is also unspecified. As in, how many bullets do we need? Umpty, keep 'em coming. By the First World War, the word had morphed into the more commonly used umpteen. As for teenagers who enjoy officiating baseball games, well, they'll need a different word. If you need a guy to embarrass you in a speech in front of all your loved ones, you need a best man. Be it a friend, relative, or even a dog if you booked an accommodating venue, the best man assists the groom in his wedding preparations and acts as Lord of the Rings for the big day. The origins of this term come from the Germanic Goths, who would kidnap brides from the neighboring tribes when the marriage pickings were slim in their own. To make a clean getaway, this hopeful bridegroom sans bride would need a right-hand man to help out. This man had to be the very best at making sure the bride's family didn't come looking for her during the ceremony itself. Thus, a wedding tradition was born, and from such charming origins. A deadline refers to the absolute last chance you have to complete a task. But back in the Civil War, this term had a different meaning. In 1864, the word was used in military prisons for the line that, if crossed, would condemn someone to death. The modern world took up the word in the mid-20th century, and, while nobody likes deadlines, we'll take our definition over the 1864 definition any day. What does untimely death have to do with purchasing acres of cropland? In other words, why do we say someone bought the farm when they die? There are a few possible explanations. Firstly, originating with U.S. Air Force pilots back in the 50s, the phrase meant that when a pilot died, his family could pay off the farm's mortgage using the benefits of his untimely demise. A pilot's life could quite literally buy the farm. The other explanation is a reference to the desire for a soldier to return to a peaceful life, i.e., owning a farm. Thus, a soldier who perishes in action bought the farm early. Whether it's drawing on the wall with crayons as a child or screwing up at work as an adult, at one point or another, we've all had to face the music to reckon with the consequences of our actions. The background of this phrase is unconfirmed, but it suggests that the 19th century term originates from when an officer was dismissed from the military. If it's not bad enough to be kicked out of the armed services, officers would leave to the sounds of beating drums and band music. At that point, you might as well dance. It's not like they can kick you out again. The bikini is a two-piece swimsuit that doesn't skimp on the skimping. The name comes from the Bikini Atoll in the South Pacific, which gained notoriety as a place that was just hammered with atomic bombs in 1946. Also, a certain square-trousered sea sponge lives there, though it's hard to say which is more notorious. The name of the testing grounds became world-renowned, reaching French clothing designer Louis Réard, who happened to be designing swimwear at the time. The name stuck, and poolside history was made. Raunchy is something you might call an R-rated comedy, or a particularly bad smell. It generally refers to something that is offensive. Back in the 1930s, the word was used regularly to describe messy cadets, but not for the same reason. If some young grunt showed up to the function looking like a slob, that sloppy cadet was referred to as a raunchy, which came from the Spanish word rancho, a farm that evoked imagery of sloppy animals and dirt. As the word evolved, so did its meaning, focusing less on its unkempt origins and more on the director's cut of Wedding Crashers. If you were to commit an embarrassing mistake, a monumental disaster, or the most egregious blunder you can think of, you may have just royally screwed the pooch. Screwing the pooch is a variation on an old military expression that originally contained way more profanity. Back in World War I, it essentially meant one was wasting time, though official prints would record it as the more broadcast-safe variation, feeding the dog. By World War II, the word had evolved into the mistake-oriented version we know today. No dogs were harmed in the making of this term. Cowboys are the subjects of many movies, TV shows, paintings, novels, toys, statues, neon signs, Pixar heroes, and one of the founding members of the Village People. The thought of a cowboy conjures up images of a man on horseback, dirty and sweaty from the day's sun, tending cattle in the western U.S. Rugged, quiet, but with a gentle demeanor, and always ready for an adventure. But during the American Revolutionary War, cowboys weren't good or even cool guys. The most quintessential of American concepts was actually a word used for partisan turncoats in Westchester County, New York. The British Army would hire these cowboys to plunder cattle and supplies from American farms and bring them to the redcoats. Of course, the cowboys we know and love also plundered cattle and supplies, but they were American. English speakers love portmanteaus, when you smash two words together to get a new one. It's how we got words like brunch, lunch and breakfast, smog, smoke and fog, and Bennifer, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. Ginormous, the hugified team-up of the words gigantic and enormous, happened around World War II. British servicemen as early as 1942 were using the portmanteau as slang to describe something really, extremely, monstrously big. Ever since then, the word has regularly appeared in the slang books of soldiers and sailors alike, continuing after the armed combat had died down. The word can still be found in the greater vocabulary today, appearing as a non-standard word in many dictionaries, but only the ginormous ones. So what do you think? Have you ever used any of these terms in your day-to-day life? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.